In the serene, picturesque town of Ilorin, nestled between rolling hills and calm rivers, 9-year-old Toby lived with his father, Mr. Adebanjo, and his stepmother, Auntie Fumi. Life in the Adebanjo household seemed ordinary from the outsider, warm home with laughter and routines. Yet, within Toby's heart, a storm of confusion brewed. Toby's parents had divorced when he was a toddler, a change he barely remembered. His father had been his anchor, ensuring Toby's childhood remained as stable as possible. But when Auntie Fumi entered their lives a year ago, Toby's world began to shift. At first, he had liked her. She brought a liveliness to the house that had been absent for years. Her meals were delicious, her hugs warm, and her enthusiasm infectious. But as time passed, little things about Auntie Fumi began to unsettle him. It wasn't her bright laughter, or her bustling energy. It was something subtler, harder to define. Her presence seemed to expand into every corner of his life, sometimes in ways that made him feel exposed and uneasy. One quiet evening, as Toby meticulously arranged his collection of comic books, Auntie Fumi appeared in his room. "Toby, your room is such a mess," she exclaimed, though his room was relatively tidy. "Auntie, I'll clean it up myself," he replied softly, not wanting to sound ungrateful. But she didn't listen. Instead, she began rearranging his shelves and folding clothes that didn't need folding. Toby watched in silence, his chest tightening. It felt as though his private space was being invaded, yet he didn't know how to tell her to stop. Her smile, as warm as it was, seemed as she believed she was helping. The unease lingered, growing stronger with each passing day. The turning point came one Saturday afternoon after Toby had been playing football with his friends. Sweaty and tired, he returned home and went straight to the bathroom to take a bath. He had just begun lathering soap onto his arms when the door opened. "Oh, Toby, you missed a spot on your back," Auntie Fumi said cheerfully as she walked in. Toby's heart skipped a beat. "Auntie, I can do it myself," he said, his voice shaky. But she ignored his protest and picked up a sponge. "Don't be shy. I used to do this for my nephews all the time," she said with a laugh. Toby froze. He felt his face grow hot, and a lump formed in his throat. She scrubbed his back lightly, humming a tune, as if everything was perfectly normal. But to Toby, it was anything but normal. When she reached for his hair, he finally stepped away, grabbing his towel and wrapping it around himself. "I'm done now," he said quickly, stepping out of the bathroom. He didn't wait for her response. That night, Toby lay in bed, replaying the incident in his mind. It felt wrong, but he didn't know why. He couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort, even as he tried to convince himself it was just a misunderstanding. Over the next week, the unease between Toby and Auntie Fumi grew. Mr. Adebanjo, busy with his work, didn't seem to notice. One day, he took Toby shopping for new clothes. Toby had been ecstatic, picking out a bright red hoodie and a pair of sneakers that lit up when he walked. When they returned home, he proudly showed Auntie Fumi his new clothes. Her eyes lit up as she picked up the hoodie. "Oh, I love this," she said, slipping it over her head. Toby stared in disbelief. "Auntie, that's mine," he said quietly. "I'm just trying it on," she replied, spinning in front of the mirror. "It looks great on me, doesn't it?" Toby didn't respond. His chest felt tight, and his hands balled into fists. When she finally took it off and handed it back, it felt tainted. That night, he avoided her entirely, retreating to his room, where he could be alone with his thoughts. By Monday, Toby's confusion and frustration had reached a boiling point. During recess at school, he sat on a bench, watching the other kids play. His favourite teacher, Miss Ade, noticed him sitting alone and approached. "Toby, is everything okay?" she asked gently, sitting beside him. Toby hesitated. He liked Miss Ade. She was kind and always listened, but he wasn't sure if he could tell her what was on his mind. After a long pause, he whispered, "Miss Ade, can I tell you something? But you have to promise not to tell anyone." Miss Ade smiled warmly. "You can tell me anything, Toby. I'm here to help." Slowly, Toby recounted the incidents, the bath, the hoodie, and the way it all made him feel. Miss Ade's smile faded as she listened, her expression turning serious. When he finished, she placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Toby, you're very brave for telling me this," she said, "but this is something your dad needs to know. I'll help you talk to him." That evening, Miss Ade called Mr. Adebanjo. She explained what Toby had told her, choosing her words carefully to avoid alarming him. Mr. Adebanjo was stunned. "I had no idea," he said after a long pause. "I thought everything was fine." "Sometimes children don't say how they feel until it becomes too much," Miss Ade replied. "It's important to address this now." When Toby came home, his father called him into the living room. "Toby, can we talk?" he asked. Toby nodded, sitting down nervously. His father's voice was calm as he said, "Miss Ade told me what you've been feeling. I'm so sorry I didn't notice earlier. I need you to know that your feelings are important to me. If anything ever makes you uncomfortable, you can always tell me." Toby's eyes welled up with tears. "I didn't want to make you upset," he said softly. "You could never upset me by telling the truth," his father replied. "We'll figure this out together." Later, Mr. Adebanjo confronted Auntie Fumi. Toby could hear their voices from his room, his father's calm but firm, hers defensive and slightly raised. "I didn't mean to make him uncomfortable," she said. "I was just trying to help." "Intentions don't matter if the child feels unsafe," Mr. Adebanjo replied. "We need to set clear boundaries." Over the next few weeks, changes began to unfold. Auntie Fumi apologized to Toby, promising to respect his personal space. She started attending counseling sessions to better understand boundaries and her role as a stepmother. Mr. Adebanjo also made an effort to spend more time with Toby, asking about his day and ensuring he felt heard. Though things seemed to improve, Toby remained cautious. The unease he felt for so long wasn't something that could vanish overnight. But he had learned an important lesson. Speaking up was the first step toward change. Trusting Miss Ade had been difficult, but it had made all the difference. One night, as Toby lay in bed, he thought about the future. His family was still figuring things out, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of hope. He knew he wasn't alone anymore. That made all the difference. The story of Toby teaches several vital lessons about trust, boundaries, and the importance of communication. Trust your feelings. If something makes you uncomfortable, it is essential to acknowledge those feelings and reflect on why you feel that way. Toby's unease was valid, even if he couldn't immediately articulate why. Speak up. Sharing your worries with a trusted adult or friend can make a significant difference. Toby's decision to confide in Miss Ade was a brave step that led to meaningful change. Respect boundaries. Adults must understand the importance of respecting children's boundaries. Auntie Funmi's actions, though well-meaning, crossed those boundaries and caused distress. This highlights the need for clear communication and sensitivity. Listen and act. Parents and caregivers must be attentive to the emotional needs of children. Mr. Adebanjo's willingness to listen and take action showed Toby that his feelings mattered. Healing takes time. Building trust and creating a safe environment is a gradual process. Toby's journey shows that while change may not happen overnight, consistent effort and understanding can pave the way for a brighter future. This story reminds us that fostering open communication and respecting personal space are essential components of healthy relationships, whether within families or communities.